Hey guys, welcome to another Fighting Indoctrination podcast video with your host Tony J. Before we get started, I want you to hit that subscribe button, click the like, hit the notification bell for more videos. We're going to jump into this one today. I know it's a lot of people right now about to go back to school. This is the week. This is the time. A lot of kids are going to be going back to school. And I felt like this time we need to jump into the situation with the teacher shortage. I know many of you heard in the news lately that there's a teacher shortage, and one of the things is its impact right now down in Baltimore. Because Baltimore right now, as it stands, has 675 vacant teacher positions. But it used to be a time when I really gave a damn about teachers. But now, when I think about it, I honestly could give two shits about teachers right now. And I know this is not a very popular idea, but hear me out. You know, we employ teachers around the country. But one of the biggest problems with how we hire teachers is whether or not they're effective in the classroom. So when I hear people talk about, who's going to fill the teacher shortage, that the country is not worried about teachers, and I've been saying for a long time the country has been worried about teachers for a very long time. We've paid teachers the average salary. We've paid teachers over $50,000 to $60,000 a year, and yet our kids still come out of school unprepared for the world. Completely unprepared for life as we see it. A lot of these teachers are often very qualified to teach in a classroom. Some of them can be so qualified that they make horrible teachers. We have a problem in this country about credentials. And one of the things, even when I got out of college, I thought about the idea, and I was like, this country focuses more on credentials and accreditation and certification, and whether you got 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years worth of experience. But when we focus so much on credentials, we forget that our children need us. Our children need their parents as well. Because most of the time, what's really missing from the discussion about education in the United States is the parents and how they teach their children. Now, we could talk about how, America needs to support its teachers. And we've had this conversation for the last 20 years, since No Child Left Behind. But one of the problems that I often find in the last 20 years is that with the change and the shift in policy, we're seeing teachers get lazy. And I want you to hear me out. I'm not trying to pick on teachers, but I feel like there's something that has to be said about teachers that never gets talked about in the media, never really gets discussed in the media. And that's the issue of how there's a majority of female teachers in public school systems. But with public school systems, there's a decaying infrastructure that surrounds it. So we give teachers everything they need, and we've been giving teachers everything they need in order to teach our children. But what you find is you have lazy ass teachers. Teachers who go from administrative to teaching a class because they're certified, and some that go from teaching a class to going back into administrative duties as far as the typical administrative stuff, staffing, working for the principal. But I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion. I know there's going to be a few people that watch this video and say, well, you don't know a damn thing about teachers. And I know that's what's crossing your mind right now. And that could be farthest from the truth, because as a child, growing up in the Baltimore City public school system, I've seen a lot of lazy ass teachers. Now, I'm not talking about every teacher, but the few bad apples that I've encountered had no business being in a goddamn classroom. And you and I know this. And some of you are parents, and a lot of you have children. You go to work, you come home, you gotta do homework with your children. But not once, you only get to see the teacher either during PTA meetings or during when a child acts up. And, when I was coming up in the Baltimore City public school system, those were the only 2 times you got to see a teacher, or where a parent had interacted with the teacher, is when the child did something wrong and something bad. It was a behavioral problem. It was never in also on PTA meeting time. That's when they met the parents. So you only get to see the parents. The teachers only see the parents only 4 times out of the semester. And what I often find troubling is teachers often have this habit of making the child seem like they're the failure. Most of the time, they used to have this saying, children don't fail them, teachers don't fail children, children fail themselves. And I've heard that ad nauseum throughout my years in grade school. But the problem is teachers have a bad habit of focusing on the negatives of a student and never on the positive aspects. Whenever a parent gets a call it's never under the guise of something positive. It's always under the guise of something negative. This too often goes on and often went on in my childhood years. Teachers like to say, you know, they're doing their best or they're trying their best, but most often they fail. They fail themselves and they fail the children that are in their class. Now, is that all the fault of, somebody like, is it the fault of the teacher? I wouldn't necessarily say that it's the fault of the teacher. Is it a fault of society as a whole? Yes. Policy wise, it is the fault of the system itself. And granted, there are cracks in the system. But really, the focus here is on how teachers are taught to handle students, especially the behavioral problem ones. We like to say, the only reason teachers are quitting, and I've seen this most of the time, the only reason teachers are quitting is because, we got badass kids. And that could be farthest from the truth. Granted, there are bad kids. And granted, some of them have taken away from the educational process. But then there's the type of teacher that you don't want teaching your children. And those are the ones that are in it because they are quote unquote certified. These overly certified teachers, they go through months and months of training. Some of them go through Teach for America and become licensed teachers. They work at inner city schools, and it seems like in this country, especially even when I was in college, there used to be a thing about becoming a teacher. They used to have all these advertisements on TV about, change the world, become a teacher. But then you look at the system as a whole, and it's got cracks in it. It's like they give you all the tools necessary, but then they put you in the midst of the jungle to teach at a failing school that doesn't have the resources for you to reach the youth. And it's like, on the back end, I'm talking about mainly the system. Then I'm going to move on to the individual. You get teachers that come out of these programs. They go to these urban inner cities, and then they become teachers. And they teach in a classroom, and they don't have any type of cultural nuance about how to reach the students that they're teaching. And in this day and age, there are some teachers out there that just don't really try to get to know students, and that's one of the biggest points. They don't get to try to understand the personality of a student. So when they get into these classrooms, they don't really try to see or recognize that potential in that student. They just look at them as another body. And, there has to be, what really needs to change is students need to get to know their students on a personal basis. They have to, you know, because one of the biggest problems that I find is that they don't want to really get to know the student. They just want to talk at the student. And you have a lot of those teachers, they talk at students as if they're stupid. They insult their intelligence. They act like they're not as smart as they think they are. So they treat them any old kind of way. And those are the type of teachers that are lingering, especially in the public school system. Now, I'm not going to, I'm going to be politically incorrect here. And I'm going to give a blunt truth that many people might not want to hear. A lot of black female teachers, in particular, have a very, very hard time trying to reach out to young black males. And that's one of the unfortunate things with a lot of teachers, because, unfortunately, that an overwhelming majority of teachers in the public school system are women. That's a fact. There are not many black male teachers in classrooms. And especially in Baltimore, in a city like Baltimore. I've had maybe only 3, I would say maybe 4 male teachers out of maybe 20 female teachers. And the biggest problem that I find is that a lot of black female teachers can be downright insulting to black male students. And, a lot of these female teachers, they get hired. Some of them maybe did 4 years worth of college, maybe got their teaching position through a soror or a sorority sister, and ended up teaching at one of these schools. And probably got their degree, or not degree, but probably more than likely got their job through some type of nepotism. Not because they were good, but because they had a friend working at the school, and then they got their teaching job that way. And that's the type of corruption that goes on in Baltimore City Public Schools. And it's a lot of things and problems that go undiscussed And we know it happens, but we don't really want to talk about it. We don't want to talk about that type of corruption. So we send black female teachers, and I'm gonna talk about the white teachers later on, but I wanna really address the black female teachers first. You have a lot of black female teachers who don't know how to actively engage with their class. Some of them, they're too, what we call, they're too abrasive towards their male students, less abrasive towards their female students. And I think that kind of comes from how they interact with young boys outside of the classroom, whether or not they have children or not. But what I often notice with a lot of these teachers is that they could just be downright abrasive towards their students. Sometimes they overly discipline their students, and they insult them. And I've seen black female teachers insult their students as if they were dumb, make crass remarks towards their students, and still keep their teaching job because they're credentialed and because they got union protection. Doesn't matter if they're bad, doesn't matter if they were horrible teachers and their class kept on failing and failing and failing and failing. They kept their job. They kept their job and they still got incentives to be paid to teach. And unfortunately, because of those discrepancies and because of the shift in policy, our kids continue to fail whenever we have those types of teachers in the classroom. I had an experience 20 years ago with a black female teacher. Not going to say her name for professional purposes, but this was a long time ago. Round about, I would say, 2002. September 2002, to be exact. Through the 2003 school year. Now, I had this teacher for a year. She was my math teacher. And she had many credentials. She was a graduate of college. Not going to say a particular college. I'm not going to put that out there. But she was my math teacher. And she said a lot of things, very hurtful things, to me as a child that I'll never forget. Simply because I wasn't good at math. Didn't even lift the damn finger to even help me. Had to find outside tutors to help me pass math. But yet, every time I came to class, came in her classroom, tried to do the work. She would always say, get ready for summer school because you're not going to make it. Every time I got a answer or math question wrong, she would say I was lost in the applesauce. Now, throughout the whole entire year, this woman insulted me, denigrated me, always had a sarcastic remark come out of her mouth. And yet at the end of it all, even when I passed 2 exams for the year, 2 state exams, she thought she had the audacity to threaten me with retaining me, saying that she was going to hold me back in the 7th grade and threaten me to try and scare me, even though a teacher cannot hold a student back. She could recommend I be retained, but only the Board of Education would have the last say, and only the superintendent would recommend holding me back. But all the way throughout this whole ordeal, she tried to threaten me with retainment. And she tried to threaten the whole entire class with retainment. Even when the whole class had failed. Now, she had this arrogance about her because she was a teacher, that she could hold a whole entire class back if she wanted to. But it was also her arrogance, as she thought that she was doing something right by threatening retainment. But at the end of the day, she couldn't do it. Now, this is one of the bigger problems with black female teachers in particular. And the reason why I'm targeting black female teachers is because the bigger issue is the lack of what I would call a care or concern for black boys in these classrooms. In her bias, she had a very strong bias towards young black boys in her classroom. And many black female teachers like this still linger around in the Baltimore public school system. They have a disdain for black boys. And oftentimes, because these school systems are filled with black female teachers, all of them have a problem and a deficit in trying to reach out to black boys. And that's one of the reasons why, a lot of black boys fall through the cracks of the system because of teachers like that. And teachers like that I have encountered, who don't do the work to try to get young black boys moving forward, because of the arrogance and because of the laziness, and because they think that because they have their credentials, they don't need to do the work to try to reach their students. They have no care or concern for their students. And those type of teachers, and I'm gonna use a military term here because it's kind of fitting for this type of issue. I call them enemy combatants. And it's I know it's a military term, but when dealing with teachers and how they deal with black students and black boys in particular, it's always a combative relationship. And it seems like there is a situation in the Baltimore City public school system that helps to undermine black boys and helps to destabilize them because they're not emotionally cared for by these teachers. They're just, well, he's dumb, so we're going to set him in a corner and give him some worksheets. Or we're just going to, he's not necessarily going to make it, so we're just going to, take it easy on him, you know. And, the abrasiveness of it all, we don't really talk about that too much because nobody wants to really criticize teachers, and I understand that. But when dealing with Baltimore in particular, my city, because there's such a teacher shortage, a lot of black female teachers don't generally care about young black boys, and a lot of these black boys, they're in the classroom. A majority of them are in the classroom and they're trying to do the work. But because there's no general care and concern for them and their well-being, they put obstacles in their way that make it even harder for them to even grasp the material. The minute you start insulting your students as if they're stupid is the minute you've already lost them and they turn off completely. And a lot of women have said some foul shit, excuse my language, to these young men and completely shattered their ability to be, to try and reach them, to try to reach them completely. But they don't get removed from the class. None of these teachers get removed from the class. They carry this authoritative ideal with them, and they're overly abrasive. And a lot of black female teachers are very, very abrasive in the classroom to a point where most students don't want to deal with them. I've had subs that were just as worse. Substitute teachers that didn't have a care and concern for their students. But when you're in a classroom full of kids and they don't have a care and concern about you, and you're just another number to them, that's when you completely fall through the cracks. That's where you fail. That's when you start to drown. Let me put a vision in your head for a second. You're 15 years old. You're in, let's say, middle school, because most of the time it's more female teachers in the middle school system and junior high than it is in high school. You're in middle school. You get a teacher. She's a black female teacher. We'll create a name. Oh, Miss Dunaway's class. I got Miss Dunaway for math. You got 40 students in a classroom. All of them disengaged. You sitting in the back because ain't nothing going on up at the front. You trying to learn. She's trying to teach a lesson. She got a mismanagement of the whole entire classroom because she doesn't have it organized. Now think about it this way. Put yourself in the put yourself in the black boy's shoes for a minute. Put yourself in his shoes. I'm going to math class. Or I'm going to English class. Miss Dunaway is sitting at her desk trying to teach the lesson. She can't get control of the classroom. You sitting in the back with your homeboys. You sit in the back. She says, everybody open your books. Be quiet. I don't want to hear your mouth. Turn to the back of the books. Do answers 2 through 27 and 30 through 52 in the back of the book. While she's sitting at her desk drinking a Coke and eating some Utz chips. You don't know what the hell's going on. Everybody quiet for 75 minutes. It's a 75-minute class. Ain't nobody doing nothing except work, book work. She ain't trying to teach the class. She not trying to get you engaged. She just wants you to open your textbook and do some work problems or some word problems and sit back and just, while she sit up there and eat her Utz chips and drinks her Coke. Those are the type of black female teachers that we have in the school system. Those who are so lazy and so credentialed that they won't even try. They get resources and they get so much time. They get incentives and the kids still don't learn shit. And the parents don't know because the parents don't care. But the only time the parents do care is when she complaining. Is when she calling you up to the school, calling you off work to try and say, oh, yeah, Daquan not doing his work. Daquan sitting in the back falling asleep. Daquan not doing this. Daquan not doing that. Yeah, Daquan didn't do any work all day. He didn't even do his homework assignments that I gave him. Daquan is disengaged in class. All he does is sit in the back and talk to his friends. But see, you hear that one story as a parent and you think, well, you know what? It's the kid's fault. I'm going to whoop his ass. I'm going to punish him. When he get home, he punished. He ain't playing no video games. He ain't going outside with his homeboys. You punish. And I'm going to take your Xbox from you. That's the reaction of a parent. Now, that's a reactionary parent. That's a prime example of that teacher trying to use the student as a complaint, as he's the problem. And I've seen black female teachers always try to make the black student out to be the problem, but they never talk about the side where they're the fucking problem. They never do. Why do you think they got emergency cards? They abuse the emergency cards because they know that if that student don't act right, they could call their mama and their daddy anytime they want. They try to use that as a whipping post to try and get control over student, but also to try to manipulate the student half the time. And like I said, this teacher gets incentives and gets paid and gets union protection. But the student doesn't get anything. There's no benefit for him when he's in Miss Dunaway's class. Because Miss Dunaway's lazy ass doesn't want to engage with the student. She doesn't want to engage with any of the students. Doesn't remember their name. Comes in, tells everybody to shut up and sit down. But yet you worried about how burnt out teachers are. We worried about how burnt out teachers are. And I'm like, look, I know some of y'all are doing a good job, but listen. Some of y'all don't have the space or don't deserve the space to even fucking complain about not being paid enough, about not having the resources. You've had the resources. That's what No Child Left Behind was. You had the fucking resources. You had all this government money and your kids still didn't learn shit. And sometimes I like to blame the parents. Some of these parents are to blame. True. I'll give you that. But what about you? Let's talk about you for a minute. Because so many people, nobody wants to criticize the shitty teacher. Nobody wants to criticize that teacher. But they want to criticize the parent. They want to blame the administration. They want to point fingers at everybody else except them. Now, I can understand. Sometimes teaching ain't for everybody. It damn sure ain't for me. But at least when you get to be a teacher, at least try to be fucking creative. At least try and engage with your students and try to remember their fucking names. Don't be one of those teachers. Don't be one of those teachers that, you know, you're so fucking lazy that you just want to sit at a desk, eat sun chips all day, eat your sandwich and watch your stories. That's a black teacher for you. That's a black female teacher for you too. Because every time I saw a black female teacher, I already know all she going to do is come in the classroom, tell everybody to sit down and shut up, sit at her fucking desk, eat her Utz chips and eat her fucking sandwich or drink her tomato soup or whatever the fuck she has, and tell everybody to go do some worksheets. because that's what we've been doing in the Baltimore City public school system coming up. We ain't learned shit. All the fuck we ever learned was how much these teachers hated our asses. That's what we learned. What we learned was now they push you out into the real world, and then you end up getting robbed of all your opportunities at the end of your tenure. And then when they get older, then when they've been in the teaching, they've been in the public school system for so long, over 30 years, never try to change up their curricula, never try to be creative and try to engage students, but just sit there and don't try to engage with their students. Old black women, old black female teachers. Always telling kids to shut up. Sit your butt down. Don't talk when the teacher's talking. Just the arrogance. The arrogance and the temerity of all these black female teachers. And I know it's not every last one of them. I had some, but I'm talking about the particular ones. You know. And it's an experience everybody has had. It's one of the worst experiences. I remember when I was going through middle school and I had this teacher. We all used to have this teacher. Her name was Miss Brown. And Miss Brown, she was an old woman. I think this woman had to have been about maybe 63 years old. Or 67, actually. She'd been teaching for a long time. Miss Brown wasn't just any old teacher. She was an English teacher. And all the eighth grade boys hated her ass. They hated her with a vengeance. We used to go down the hallway. We used to see Miss Brown. And I remember it was like, oh shit. God damn, Miss Brown, yo. God shit. And Miss Brown would be like, what are you doing in the hallways? Go to your class, young man. This is the last time I'm going to tell you to be out in these hallways. Don't be out in these hallways. I mean, damn, man. Like every time Miss Brown came out, I mean, that you know what? We used to say, we used to whisper under our breath. I'm like, every time we have our books in our hands, I'm like, we used to mumble under our breath. We used to say, yeah, man, this bitch. Fucking bitch. You know? And Miss Brown would come out in the hallway. She'd be like, I'm coming from gym. I'm just coming out of gym. I get a drink of water. And I'm like, and then all of a sudden I see Miss Brown coming up the hallway. And Miss Brown's like, young man, you got 5 minutes to get your water. Hurry up. And I'm not even in her class. Everybody know Miss Brown. I'm not even in Miss Brown's class. I'm like, bitch, who the fuck is you? To tell me to hurry up and get my water and get to class. I'm not even in your fucking class. You fucking dingbat. I mean, just the arrogance, man. Like this is the shit that we have to go through as students. Like every student got that one teacher that gave him a fucking headache. I mean, Miss Brown was number one, numero uno, and Miss Brown was like she come up the hallway. We knew she was the hellhound. She was the hellhound, and I was like, man, why the fuck does she come out here telling everybody what to do? And she's like the old lady next door that don't nobody want to speak to. When she come down the street, everybody run inside before Miss Brown come out. That's how scared we was as 13-year-old. We was scared of a 67-year-old woman. This is a black woman. And she's sitting up here just chastising all these 13-year-olds. I remember one time Miss Brown was teaching 7th grade English. And all of a sudden, you hear her mouth all the way down the hallway telling a student to get out. She's like, get out! Get out now! Get your things and get out of my classroom! And I'm like, damn, who she threw out now? I'm walking down the hallway, I'm like, and he hiding in the bathroom and shit. I'm like, damn, yo, Miss Brown threw you out? And she's like, yeah, that bitch threw me out. And I'm like, damn, yo, what she throw you out for? And we sitting in the bathroom. I'm like, damn, yo, Miss Brown threw you out? What the fuck she threw you out for? I'm like, and she threw me out cause I was whispering under my breath and shit. I'm like I was trying to help out somebody else, and she's like I was talking too loud. I'm like, damn, she threw you out for that shit? And my ears must be really, really good for you, for her to hear that shit. Just, teachers throw you out for little small shit. Just mundane shit. And I was like, I don't get it. I honestly don't give two shits about the teacher shortage. Cause to be honest, some of y'all don't deserve to be fucking teachers anyway. And some people just don't. Some people just, they just not good at teaching. Like, but people are afraid to tell somebody. I'm like, look, you're not good at this shit. Okay? Like, don't try to hold your kids hostage to your fuck shit because you can't get a job anywhere else. You can easily get an administrative job and just be good with it, and you ain't gotta teach no kids. There's plenty of jobs in the school system where you can still keep your job, but just don't be in a classroom. And some people they not built for being in a classroom, and there's not a real honest talk about these. It's not a real honest talk about these things because we're raised in a society that we have to value teachers all the time, even though some of these teachers are shitty and they make every child's experience, a learning experience, a living hell. And I know a lot of teachers like that. A lot of teachers that really don't care or don't give two shits about the student. There's all this talk in the media about the teacher. There's never no talk about the student and what the student experiences. I thought the learning experience was about the student, not the fucking teacher. I'm like, where do you get this? Like we don't have a fucking voice in this whole thing. You don't see CNN talking to students and talking to kids about their learning experience. All you hear is the teacher. The teacher. We need Teacher Appreciation Day. We need teachers to be paid higher wages. We need teachers to make over $50,000 to $60,000 a year. I'm like, the fuck? So basically all this shit is about money? That's the reason why you became a fucking teacher? Not because you care about kids, because yeah, I got student loans to pay off. I got bills to pay. That's why I'm a teacher. I had a teacher before. I had a teacher that used to be an alcoholic. And I remember a long time ago, and this is a true story. I had a fifth grade teacher a long time ago. He had a drinking problem. And he said he was going to take his students on a field trip. And we were walking to the store. And for some odd reason, while we were walking to the store, you know, he had us stand in the middle of the aisles at Family Dollar. And we didn't know. We didn't know whether or not he was coming to get us, but I didn't really understand why the hell he was taking us to Family Dollar, even though it was down the street. But he talking about he was taking the kids on a field trip, even though it was an unauthorized field trip. Come to find out, the way I saw it, I saw him walking right past the liquor store. Now, I know he didn't want us to see that. That's why he led us into Family Dollar and had us line up where he didn't want us to actually see where he was going. But we were looking for him in the store. We didn't see him in the store, so we just stood there, waited 5 minutes, trying to figure out where the hell he went. And then all of a sudden, he told us to get out the store and come with him and follow him. I don't know why the hell he had us waiting in the store. I thought it was for some products to buy some school supplies or whatnot or whatever, but it was real odd. You being a 10-year-old and they say they're going to take you on a field trip and they walk you and have you sit in the middle of fucking Family Dollar. And then they turn around and act like they ain't going to the liquor store. That's the type of teachers that exist in those systems. Some of these teachers ain't clean. Some of these teachers, they got substance abuse issues. A lot of teachers, they like putting their hands on kids. There used to be a time when teachers were authorized to put their hands on a student, jack a student up. Some still do it now, but they won't do it. They won't do it right now. But back then, before cameras and before social media, teachers were good at hiding the fact that they beat the shit out of a student, or they jacked a student up, or they cussed them out to the point of making them cry. You know, a lot of these teachers are very brutal to their students. And that's the thing that doesn't really get talked about. The abuse. A lot of these teachers are very abusive to their students. You want to talk about teacher shortages? I don't feel sorry for teachers. I don't feel sorry for any of you. Because to me, To me, you are just as guilty and just as conniving and sneaky and corrupt as the rest of them. But see, because you have so much authority over children and you're entrusted with that authority, nobody holds you accountable for anything. And there are never any checks and balances in the system. And until there are checks and balances in those systems, well, we're always going to have teachers that are completely corrupting their students, completely just downright abusive, and just don't want their kids to pass. They don't have a care in the world, or concern for your children. And then when the child says something about the teacher, they're not believed because they feel as though, well, they're a bad influence and they're a bad apple. There used to be a time when you couldn't even challenge the teacher. There used to be a time also where you couldn't even ask the teacher a question or question their curriculum and what they teach. I remember a long time ago, this was in 8th grade, when I told a teacher to her face that her teaching stinked. And it did. And she put me out of class, almost had me suspended for insubordination. But the truth was, if I wasn't getting it, then why the hell can't I question? That's the purpose of being a student, right? If you're not getting it in the way that she's teaching it stinks, then shouldn't she hear that truth so that she can do better? You know, a lot of people don't want to be honest. Well, oh well, you were still a child. You were 13 years old. You know, you had no business saying that to. I know that's what you're gonna say, but isn't it my future? And isn't it my future that you're fucking with? Because if you can't get the lesson down to the student in a way that is informative and engaging, then why should I continue to listen to you as a teacher if you're not even going to try to make the lesson interesting and engaging? I had a great male teacher for history class when I was in the 8th grade. He encouraged me to step up. He encouraged me to contribute more. He encouraged me to present my interpretation of the text, to where when I went home, I was doing research, I was doing background research, and I was like, yo, this is an interesting class. I look forward to this class. I wanted to be in this class, and every time I went to that class, I was like, yo, this is the best day, because when that was the last class, I was there, I was engaged, I was interested, I was participating in class, I was truly interested in the topic. And that's what you teachers don't get. You gotta engage with the student to where they can be interested in the topic, at least a little bit of interested in the topic. Y'all don't even try to do that. You just sit your kids in a fucking cemetery row, and then you sit at a desk. Difference between an engaging teacher and difference between a a teacher that does the work to try and create a curriculum that can engage the student. Black female teacher has all her students in row seats facing a blackboard. Now, how engaging is that? My black male teacher said, "Oh, put your desks in a circle. We're going to have a debate. We're going to do Jeopardy. We're going to prepare our tests. We're going to prepare for these exams by doing Jeopardy. The team that wins gets a pizza party. So make sure y'all get in groups and study." Those are the type of teachers that we need in the Baltimore City public school system. Because those are the teachers that have a lasting impact on a student. You black female teachers, y'all need to do better. Because sitting at a desk and telling kids to, here, open a book and go do the worksheets is not teaching. That's pure laziness. And these kids aren't stupid. You're going to have to do a little bit better. And that's your problem. You don't want any type of criticism about your pedagogy or the way that you teach. But you want everybody to stand and support you and pay you, and you keep reaping the benefits of that support and that union shield and that union backing that you have had for a very long time, while all your kids suffer. You take all that benefits and the resources and then you use it on yourself. You arrogant as hell and lazy. And those are teachers that don't last long. Some of y'all need to be out the classroom. Some of y'all do need to quit. Cause y'all don't deserve to be in the position that you in. You don't deserve to be no goddamn teacher. So what the fuck do I care about a teacher shortage? I don't give a shit about your fucking teacher shortage. Cause most of y'all need to be out of a fucking classroom. Y'all don't need to be in no goddamn classroom. Y'all don't need to be teaching these kids. You don't belong in a fucking classroom. I don't care if it make you cry neither. I'll make you cry just like you made all them kids cry. When you was calling them stupid. When you was calling them lost in the applesauce. Because they couldn't get a math problem right. Always being sarcastic. Making underhanded remarks. Denigrating your students. Putting your students down. And you want somebody that has some sympathy for you? I don't have no sympathy for you. I don't have sympathy for any of you. Because y'all the problem. Y'all the cause of why the school system is the way it is. I mean, There are some good ones out there. And I'll give them their credit. They don't get enough credit. But see, those are the ones that, see, the ones that are good, you ain't got to worry about nothing. You ain't got to worry about this teacher shortage. Because you know why? Because it's the kids that's going to really fight for you. It's the kids that's going to say, I want my teacher back. I want them back in the classroom. Why is my teacher gone? Where did they go? You know when your kids truly care about you is when they'll fight for you and they'll start crying if you're not in the classroom. Those are the kids those are the kids that's going to try and fight for you. People should be worried. These teachers should be worried more about these kids instead of these teachers' pensions. Because I remember we had some good teachers back in the day. It were teachers that were so good, and then the administration did something to them and they walked away. And I know those type of teachers, and those are the type of teachers that we still need. But because the system does what they do, they'll take a good teacher and throw them in the ringer and then turn around and put a horrible bad teacher in there. They'll try to do that before they give you a good one. And that's one of the reasons why I said, I'm not talking about every teacher. I don't want you to think I'm denigrating all teachers, because I'm not. But I'm pointing out the bad apples for a reason, because none of them get called out for the corruption that they bring to the system. And that's why you see a lot of boys and a lot of girls slip through the cracks of the system because of these teachers. I've had good teachers. I've had good white teachers too. Teachers that look out for me as if I was their own child. I would never say anything against them. They were able to turn my life around. But I'm talking about the ones that are really horrible, screwy people. They got to be out of a classroom. They can't be in a classroom. They can't be. Because our children are suffering. They're suffering from this madness. And I think we need to clean house. Get some of these teachers out of these schools. And make sure that these bad apples never return. Teacher shortage is just what it is. I can't say that it's good or it's bad. But I think right now, I think the system itself needs a do-over. We have to. We can't keep doing the same things again and again and again. We can't keep having that. That's why it's important for us to try to get teachers that are engaging and not just a bunch of disciplinaries that look like they came out of a correctional institution. Well, I'm done, man. I'm gonna wrap this up. I thank you for listening to the show. I thank you for tuning in and being a subscriber. If you've just gotten on this page and have seen my videos, I just want you to click a like, hit subscribe, click the bell notifications. Um, we got some more videos coming. So stay tuned. This is Tony J, reminding you to always fight indoctrination. I'm out.